Hello and welcome everyone to our 8th Senior Executive Forum, our first forum in a completely virtual fashion. My name is Thomas Schaffner and I'm partner at Simpulse and head of our UK office. It's been almost a year and I went back in time. It was exactly 343 days since our last forum on the topic of Customer Rediscovered, which we held in the deeply missed Barber Surgeon Hall in London. And as you all know, a lot has changed since then, but I'm extremely proud and happy to open our 8th edition of our Senior Executive Forum tonight. Adapting to the circumstances in today's world, we have decided to run this event in a form of a virtual panel, and I'm really excited to hear all the insightful opinions and views from our great panelists tonight. So, some housekeeping rules before we start. We're using this live event meeting as our platform tonight. So this means only the 6 presenters that we're going to hear tonight have the possibility to unmute and speak. Nevertheless, all your valued participants online have the opportunity to ask questions via the Q&A functionality available right from the start. We will collect all those questions during the panel session and we'll integrate them in the discussion as we go. So please be active, ask your questions, and also share your views. In this sense, I wish you now a very insightful and interesting virtual panel, and I would like to hand over to Tariq Khan, who will be our moderator and host for tonight. Over to you, Tariq.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Thomas. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thank you all for joining. It's great to see the panel, and I hope the attendees find it very useful as well. And the objective of today's session is to discuss the role of intelligent automation in UK wealth management. We are defining intelligent automation quite basically as software such as RPA or robotic process automation software, which normally deals with automating rule-based manual processes, and also software such as AI or artificial intelligence, which has the ability to learn after being exposed to data. And examples of AI that I'm sure you all will be used to is machine learning and natural language processing. There's a few really important and specific topics that we're going to try and cover today. So namely, we're going to look at what is the state of adoption of intelligent automation in UK wealth management and why? What are the outcomes that firms can and should expect? What are the potential benefits? What are the potential pitfalls? And also, what might future use cases look like? Now, we're really fortunate we've got an excellent expert panel here today who are going to share their insights and share their experiences. And I'm going to pass over to them just to give a brief introduction of themselves and maybe their firm. And one of them, Mark Graveney, is running a bit late. He's having a few technical issues, so hopefully he'll join a bit later. So let's start with Kevin, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Barry. I work for Ruffer, who are a wealth stroke asset manager, 20 billion AUM. We manage one core strategy, which is a multi-asset, cautiously managed total return strategy. I work in technology and I manage the investment technology function at Ruffer. I've been at Ruffer for 2 years, and before Ruffer, I've worked at a number of other large and medium-sized investment managers.
Thanks, Kevin. Can we move, Andy, can you go, please?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Andy Brodie. I'm the COO at Rathbones. I've been here for 6 months. I think all of you know that Rathbones provides individual investment and wealth management services. And I think is a reasonably well-known brand in the marketplace. As COO, I look after operations, change, technology and facilities. Delighted to be here, thanks.
Thanks, Andy. And Andre, can you introduce next, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Berger and I'm partner at Simpulse and responsible for the global practice of intelligent automation and artificial intelligence. And I'm happy to broadcast live from Frankfurt now.
Thanks, Andre. I'm going to set the scene with what I think are some startling statistics. And I'm going to take these from some very recent research from Simpulse, with C-level wealth managers. And I'm just going to highlight two facts. They're two big numbers, actually. The first one is that over 70%, almost 80% of wealth managers intend on deploying intelligent automation over the next 12 to 18 months. But the vast majority of these are at a very early stage. At the same time, there's another big number here. At the same time, almost 70% of firms are currently reviewing their digital transformation strategy, and half of these firms are expecting to change their IT systems over the coming 12 to 24 months. So that's significant current and planned change. So the first question with this in mind is more of a background question. And I'm going to ask Andy to take the lead in this. But what place does automation have considering system change, which is a very hot topic at the moment?
Thanks, Tarek. Yeah, so I think that, in my opinion, I think automation has to sit alongside your system changes, and it needs to be considered a part of your overall data and digital agenda. They shouldn't sit independent of each other. You need to have a strategic view of your data and system architecture within your firm, and I know that a lot of people on the call will have that in place. What you also need to do, I think, in my opinion, is then understand your process hierarchy, and particularly how that links to your customer, advisor, or key channel journeys. And once you have all that information, clearly you have an opportunity then to take a step back and understand, looking at those client journeys, what particular processes you think would be improved by your strategic system changes, and then actually what might be improved via automation. Clearly, there's a lot of experienced people on the call, and I'm sure you recognise that certain processes wouldn't necessarily benefit from automation in the manner that, Tarek, you defined it earlier. You need to identify those that would. And you also have to recognise that and a lot of processes you deliver your strategic system changes will be changed, will be improved, and so that's why you have to look at automation alongside that. But I think it's also worth recognising that, as we all know, strategic system change doesn't happen overnight. It can be a multi-year journey in some respects, and clearly, if you get it right, you can incrementally deliver those system changes, but automation can play a part in that journey to help in quick wins and to sort of help improve the efficiencies and customer experience while you're delivering strategic change. And I think, overall, what you have to look at is it's going to be a blend of strategic system changes, automation, and also continuing to maintain people in your operating model to deal with that higher complex activity. And it'll be that blended model of digitization, data, and people that will help us all achieve the best in class we can for our customers and clients.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that was a great answer. Has anyone else got anything to add? There's quite a few points there that Andy made that I'll summarise after each question. But any further comments from Andre or Kevin? No? Okay, brilliant. So what I got from that is automation should be part of the digital agenda. System change is a multi-year automation. System change is a multi-year event. So automation can give you some quick wins. We might be going into, you might be able to patch and fix things in the meantime. Maybe we talk a bit more about whether you would have it in a more longer term as well. And also, Andy talked about the importance of automation in the operating model. So people, data, systems. And we'll talk about this a bit more as well. Thanks, Andy. The next question is, so the fact is that almost 8 out of 10 firms are looking to deploy intelligent automation. It's quite a broad question for three of you, which is what are the main drivers for using intelligent automation, and also how will COVID-19 impact implementation? This is for all. So who would like to start? Andre, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think the impact of COVID was kind of catharsis or accelerator. The focus shifted a little bit more from the innovation topics to automation or efficiency topics. That's one point. And on the other hand, it was an accelerator for a lot of projects, because the need just was getting urgent, because you needed more digitalization to serve the client without being physically present. And this boost of digitization was, we could feel it in several countries.
Okay, thanks for that, Andre. So you've seen it as an accelerator for digital projects in terms of COVID. How about some more of the drivers? You talked about efficiency. Is there anything that we're missing? Well, you know, what makes you think as wealth managers? So to Andy and Kevin, you know, why would you use intelligent automation?
So Tarek, I'm happy to take that one. I think one of the key drivers around intelligent automation has to be improving the client and advisor experience alongside actually our colleague experience within the firm. So that, you know, to me, clearly there's a downstream efficiency benefit, but actually the fundamental driver is how do you use automation system change to improve your client, advisor and colleague experience. So I would say that's the key driver.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. Anything to add, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with what Andy said. I mean, another key driver for us at Ruffer with our use of IA has been around process efficiency as well, and reducing error. So we've used automation, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, Tarek, when I give more detail on some of the projects we've worked on to improve operational processes. So try to automate and make more efficient operational processes.
Thanks for that. And so what I'm getting there is, in fact, COVID-19 has been an accelerator for digital projects. And I know I've spoken to Andy and Kevin separately about this as well. And some of the main drivers, really interesting one, improving the client experience. Efficiency, so process efficiency and reduction in error. And I know, Kevin, you'll talk a bit more about that in the case study section. So thanks for that. There's been a lot of hype around intelligent automation. I mean, there's been a lot of hype for about 3 to 5 years in financial services. And we've heard over the years statements from very senior executives, such as, they see the reduction in 30% in terms of jobs by 2025 across Europe, which is 1 billion jobs. Often quoted, even to me, when we're helping firms with intelligent automation, is for every £1 you spend, I'll get £5 back, right, within 12 months. So it creates a lot of buzz, but also rightly it creates a lot of trepidation as well. So I guess the next question really is, where should firms start with intelligent automation? And what return should they expect, and what return do they actually get? And I'd like Andre to take the lead here, because you've been involved in hundreds of implementations. So maybe you can separate fact from fiction for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tarek. I think the most important is to start with the problem and not with the solution. And artificial intelligence is one of several solutions for problems. So what I see is that some of the clients try to get into this hype topic and were looking for applications for artificial intelligence. But the right way would be to start with the problem. And even though if you have a hammer in the hand, you should not just look for nails or to hang up a painting with nails, even though a screw would be much better. So this is very important. So you start with the problem and you first decide, is it more the efficiency that drives you, or is it the compliance, the regulatory side that drives you, or is it the innovation and the making more business with the client's side that drives you? And according to this criteria, you usually start by doing an assessment if one application or one process is more relevant and suitable, and how much implementation effort you have for one application, and then you look at these 3 dimensions to find out and prioritize the application fields of artificial intelligence. And usually it can be really 3 areas of, let's say, efficiency. I see a lot of applications in the area of intelligent document processing, where you have self-learning applications. Using text mining and NLP, as you said at the beginning. We see this in very low intelligent forms, like reading documents that are semi-structured, like a portfolio statement for a client transfer in wealth management, or reading balance reports for research, or even reading the text of an annual report using sentiment analysis, so you can use it in the research automation, or even in some client service applications like mail and email automation, if you categorize, extract, understand and process emails or mails. And then you have more the text-to-speech and chatbot area, where you try to simulate or to recognize speech, where you have automatic client services and communication, or voice recognition as applications, or even if you document for a client as an advisor, documentation of a meeting with speech-to-text applications. And then you have the whole KYC area, where you can comply much more with regulatory. You see a lot of applications there because you usually handle a big amount of data and a big amount of sources of information, and you have to aggregate that using algorithms and self-learning systems. And on the third hand, for innovation and improvement areas, we see in the area of upselling, next best product recommendations, but also churn management. And on the market side, of course, forecasting, predictive modeling of interest, shares, markets. That's the main applications that we see. But still, it's the most important to start with the individual wealth manager. Where are the volumes, or where are the needs, where are the problems, the pain points, and then go into the solutions. Is it really artificial intelligence, or is it just clear automation, or is it even in the core systems where you have to just improve an algorithm? So it's much more important to come from the problem and to have a tool set of solutions, and not only having the hammer in the hand and searching for the nails, let's say like this.
Okay, thanks for that, Andre. So using the tool set analogy, it kind of shows that intelligent automation is like a really vast toolkit, and I guess it depends on the problem, which tool you take out and which one you use. And we'll talk about this a bit more, but have you got any comments on, so when you been implementing projects. What do firms usually expect? Do they have this perception of what I said at the beginning? You know, for every pound I spend, I'll get £5 back within 12 months. I mean, what's the firm's perception, and what usually happens in reality?
Actually, it's usually during the hype season of artificial intelligence. It was high expectation, and usually classical automation has a faster return on investment than artificial intelligence and intelligent automation, because it's much more complicated to structure unstructured data than to just process something repetitive. Anyway, there are some of the use cases that are very interesting, and you can get the payback already in 6 months to 1 year. So we can cover this need for fast return on investment, but not in all the cases. So it's very important to select quick win cases and not only dreaming 5 years ahead and trying to find the most fancy application of artificial intelligence. More to start small with the case that gives the most benefit, and then to get traction, to learn, and to scale up, and yeah, pick the low-hanging fruits first instead of trying the most fanciest thing on the market.
Okay, thanks for that, Andre. We're getting questions as we go along, which is great. I was going to leave them till the end, but some of them are directly linked to what Andy, Kevin, and Andre have already spoken about. So, quick question to the three of you, which has been asked in the chat. I think you probably had a look at it, but there seems to be a shift, according to this question, towards AI. Does that mean the RPA, for example, is simplified in the time it's matured and it's not really in our mind anymore? What does the journey look like typically from shifting? Is there even a linear shift, in your opinion, from RPA to AI? Is that a good idea? Does it depend on the solution? Is it that the market kind of responds to the hype, and is the hype of RPA over? Maybe if three of you could comment. I'll start with Andy if I can. Andy, is there in your mind, I mean, are you looking at a particular solution over another, or do you look at the issue first?
So you have to look at the issue first, I think, and understand what you're trying to achieve. And I think, as Andre said, you know, RPA can be naturally probably more associated with rules-based type process, higher volume, or artificial intelligence can help with slightly more complex solutions. You know, I think the question also says, you know, does this mean that traditional RPA automation is sort of going out of fashion? I think it slightly links back to my earlier point on system change, and I think there's also a question in here from Steve D'Souza as well around, you know, software packages and third parties and that choice. You know, if you choose your right systems, and if you're lucky enough as a firm to be able to go through that large-scale system change, you should actually get solutions that help you automate your processes, right, and reduce manual touch points through those systems. Therefore, naturally, you know, RPA is probably going to be less high on your agenda. But as I said earlier, if you're taking your time to do that, you may plug the gap with RPA. But I think if you choose the right systems, you've got less reliance on RPA than opportunity with AI.
Yeah, fair point. Good point. Just quickly, Andre, before I come to Kevin, the question also asked, do you see any difference between the German and UK market? And if so, any kind of comments on that?
Yes, I see a cultural difference, how you approach it. In UK, you have, let's say, a much more open-minded culture, and the trial and fail or trial and gain procedure is much more established in Germany. You plan, and then you plan, and at the end you maybe start, maybe not, because you have not planned enough, and this is not the fastest and most successful way. So I see it much more accelerated in UK with a learning culture and with let's say try and improve process.
Okay, thank you for that. Kevin, I'd like to bring you in here because we'd like to talk now about some use cases for intelligent automation in wealth management. You run automation as well as other facets at Ruffer. Wanted to get your insights on how it's gone so far. So could you talk us through how you formed your business case for your first deployment, what the outcome was, so what did the return on investment look like, and finally, what would you do differently?
Sure. Yeah. So the IA journey at Ruffer started for my team in Q1 and for Ruffer as a whole in Q1 last year. And the key driver was the requirements of a specific project, which was looking at redesigning our forward FX process for our pooled custody clients. And the target operating model for this project was quite complex and involved data transfer between various platforms and a number of third parties. And it was decided that it would be more cost effective to use an RPA solution than basically employ staff in a satellite office to do what was largely a data entry task. It was also felt that, you know, from a risk perspective, there'd be less chance of manual data error if a solution was automated rather than a manual process. So that was the key drivers. So I suppose cost effectiveness and the budget of the project. So what was the outcome? Well, the project was successful. I wouldn't probably be talking about it otherwise, which was good. It may help to, you know, from a practical point of view, if I quickly outline the stages we went through on the project, which may be helpful if people are thinking about approaching a similar problem. So first, we recognised this is an area where we thought it'd be useful to work with someone who had knowledge and experience in this area. So we did partner with Simpulse, and they helped us initially select the RPA platform that would meet the requirements for this project and for the wider requirements within Ruffer around RPA. And the platform that we selected in conjunction with them was Blue Prism. Post the implementation of Blue Prism, we leveraged a Simpulse consultant to work with our business to develop the first RPA process for the firm. The project did deliver successfully, did deliver the new operating model, including the new RPA process. And since that's gone live, we've also widened our use of RPA to a number of other use cases, including automation of some dividend processing, some other operational processes, and also the production of some client tax reporting as well. And for those other user cases, we've trained internal staff to do that. So we've kind of moved away from Simpulse being the developer and the supporter, and now that's done all internally within Ruffer. So overall, I would say our experience of RPA has been successful, has been positive. It enabled us to deliver successfully to the requirements of the specific project I mentioned, and we've also subsequently automated a number of manual, repetitive and time-consuming processes, and allowed staff to concentrate on more value-added activities. I mean, no one enjoyed doing the tasks that we'd automated. So I mean, it was interesting to what is the perception of our RPA? In many ways, it's positive within Ruffer because it means that people don't have to do some of these less than challenging processes. I think you also said what I would do differently. I mean, to answer that, it may probably helps if I explain the challenges we had on the project. As with any project, we did have challenges, as this was a new technology, a new approach. You would probably expect that. I mean, a key challenge, and to be honest, this was one of our own making, was that we definitely didn't select the ideal process for an initial RPA implementation. I think Andre would know this better than me, but I think best practice in this area is to select a mature and hopefully a simple process to automate first and then scale that. I think that was the words that Andre used. We did exactly the opposite, actually. We chose a new process and a complex one. So if anyone's listening and wondering how to go about that, I would say don't do that. Not least because it made for the consultant, the SimPulse consultant, it made the actual automation more complex than we first envisaged. Another challenge was the transition into BAU support, and we probably underestimate that. There's more of a learning curve for RPA, maybe as with any other technology, and it probably took us longer to fully support and be able to develop RPA solutions internally than we expected. So in terms of those were the challenges. So what I would do differently would be try and not face those same challenges again. So as mentioned, I would choose a simpler process for my first RPA implementation. And in hindsight, I think we probably could have thought earlier the operating model for support and transition into BAU support.
Thanks for that, Kevin. That was really insightful. I've got a quick question here. You said that the perception at Ruffer is very positive with respect to RPA now. My question is, did you face any challenges beforehand? Because often firms do, in terms of employee engagement and employees wondering if their own role is at risk type thing.
I can definitely see why that might happen, actually. Interestingly, it didn't for us, and why was that, I wonder? Maybe because it came on the back of the specific project that I mentioned earlier, really. So RPA was introduced into the firm on the trying to fix a specific problem, so maybe people's perception of it was slightly different. I think there were the normal jokes to begin with, the robots are taking over, etc., really. So I think there was more puzzlement of what this is and some of the terminology around it. Like I said, I think people appreciate the fact that it helps remove some of the more laborious tasks, the operational tasks, really. And Andy made a good point. Maybe if you had the perfect system, those wouldn't exist anyway, and I thought that was a good point. From my experience, though, there's never been a perfect system. So you know, maybe the shelf life, we shouldn't write off the shelf life of RPA yet. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Kevin. So you let us know the drivers that you had, which were cost efficiency and actually error reduction as well, which you managed to achieve. And yeah, it actually obviously did free up time in your case for people to do more value-added tasks and not just data entry, as you mentioned, which was a good thing, which is a good selling point. And it was interesting. Your key challenge, or what you would do differently, is that you actually probably wouldn't choose that. You wouldn't choose that process next time and go for something a bit mature and simpler. I wonder what the buy-in would have been like. The next question to everyone, and it kind of follows on from where we've just ended this, is what are the common pitfalls that firms face and that firms will face in employing intelligent automation? These might be the same as the same pitfalls as deploying any technology. But I'd like to start with Andy, if you can.
Tarek, thanks. I would definitely reinforce Kevin's point on choosing the right process, and definitely, you know, making sure that you're choosing the right process, both from the complexity of it, but also from your people perspective as well, so that you've got the buy-in around choosing it. I think the other pitfall is not completing it in a joined up manner against your overall architecture, and particularly from your data, because what you don't want to do is, you know, automate a process through RPA that impacts your data and then has a knock-on impact to some of your other data architecture, because that could have downstream challenges. And that really links to just my earlier observation around, you know, this is one part of your overall data and digital strategy, and you need to do it in a considered way. You know, and as we heard from Kevin, you know, he did that as part of an end-to-end project, and it helped him and Rafa get that right. But if you just say, right, I'm going to do RPA, go and choose a process and don't really put any thought into how it links strategically, you might end up not getting the benefits you want.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Andre, what are the common pitfalls that you've seen that have occurred in the implementations? Yeah,
I mean, my predecessors were quite right with the selection of processes. You can go wrong or can be quite right. That's a really important point, as Andy and Kevin already said. I have picked up a couple of projects where the process was stuck in the middle, which means as robotics is maybe not a rocket science, and it is easy to start with, we see a lot of bad implementations. So it's easy to do something and to start with something, but you can really go wrong and ending up with a lot of maintenance effort if you are not doing it right. So in the implementation, to modularize and to think conceptual and generic when implementing things, to be able to reuse processes and parts of processes, you can do a lot of things right or wrong, and if you do wrong, you end up with more maintenance than benefit, and you get stuck in maintaining the existing processes instead of automating new things. That's one of the things that I've seen. But most of the times it's not the technical part that fails. It's most of the times a cultural thing. So the organization is maybe not prepared to go incremental ways, which means to start and to find an 80-20 solution where not everything is automated, but just 80% that are the most important things. This is important. And the other thing is, as you mentioned before, if you go into the core business of some operators and you automate this one, it's clear that you get some resistance and some resistance from a cultural base as well. And then it's maybe better to directly grow these people into the new role. We often look in which area the most efficiency gains are possible, and we take up these people and educate them to bring to deliver even robotics in the bank or in the wealth manager. And this can be quite motivational. And if you go for tasks that are not the core business, for instance, for analysts, if they don't have to spend the time collecting data, but to analyze data, you can help them to do their job better and not going to the core of their job, which is the analysis. This could help also to accelerate and not to get too much of resistance in the bank or the wealth manager. So I think one point is also important, that you don't lose the closeness to the business. I think one thing of intelligent automation is that it can be done close to the business, and which means the business analysts can be the ones that implement the process as well. And if you do it in the classical way, where somebody does a design for the implementation, somebody implements it, somebody does the approval, and these guys are somewhere far away in the IT, you have the same issues then for other classical IT projects. You have a distance between the one that gets something and wants something and the one that delivers something, and this can be a very big advantage to have it close to the business, and you have to dare this, and you have to dedicate this kind of business side robotic specialists in the areas of execution to bring this speed down to the ground. I think that's very important. But if you go into the business areas and not in the IT areas, you need to bring in the know-how of modularized software and robots to not end up with too much maintenance. I think this is why the most of our projects are to enable banks and to educate the people to handle robots, but also to have a proper operating model, or a compliant operating model, and not to do the delivery. Because if we do the delivery, you face the same problem than having the IT, which is very far away. You lose the speed, and therefore most of the projects are to train the trainers and to establish the robotics or the intelligent automation inside the wealth manager, which is on one hand cheaper for the client, and on the other hand it gets more acceptance, and third, it is close to the business.
Okay, thanks for that, Andre. So what I'm getting so far, and Kevin, I'm just going to ask you about something. So Andy and Andre mentioned choose the right process, and again mentioned automate in a joined up way. So make it part of the digital strategy, which is reflected on some of the comments as well, and everyone seems to agree that's really important. Some of the pitfalls, maintenance or extended maintenance or over maintenance and internal resistance. And maybe some ways of mitigating that are reuse processes, but something that's really coming out here is give ownership to internal staff, because there'll be acceptance and they will do the maintenance and going forward for you. So just a quick question to Kevin. I know you're involved in this right now. what does maintenance look like for when you're moving forward, and have you have you actually experienced any bumps in this?
So our maintenance, so our kind of operating model now is that the live RPA processes are supported out of my team in technology. So we've trained up people within my team to understand Blue Prism and to code on it. If we look at it as a development language, and we support existing processes, and we have an operating model in terms of determining new requirements. So there's a business working group where new automation requirements come to, they assess those, prioritize those against all the other work that we have. You know, my team do other things as well, really. And as Andy said, our RPA is just one element of a tool set that any technology department should have. But RPA processes are assessed and prioritized that way. So that's the model that we've come to. And sorry, Tarek, was the question potential issues on the way to establishing that? Is that yeah?
Yeah, that was yeah.
So I think one challenge we had, I suppose, was the transition from Simpulse being the knowledge expert to internally, really. And there was a learning curve on that, and I wouldn't underestimate that. I view Blue Prism like another programming language as in some ways, and maybe that's one thing for people to be aware of. I think that's maybe underestimated. Maybe as in terms of RPA being sold as a solution, that it's very easy for the business people to do, and there is some truth in that, and I think Andre touched on that. But you've also got to think of the long-term support and maintenance, and developing new solutions as well. So I think it's quite easy for someone to pick up, and I think this is exactly the point that Andre made. But then you could solve one problem in isolation and in a silo area, and then the person disappears, and you're somewhat stuffed, really, isn't it? So I think that was one aspect that we probably underestimated. I think another, and I think Andre touched on this as well, and we did have this debate within Ruffer, really, is where does this sit, really? Does it sit within the business, or does it sit within technology? And there are pros and cons for both of those, and Andre, I think, summarised that very well, really. And I think we had that debate ourselves. Personally, I think for Ruffer, it's ended up in technology, and I think that's the best place. It will differ for different firms. I think for Ruffer, it's ended up in the best place. Personally, I think it is a technical platform, so I would be interested to see, for those firms, and I'm sure it does work well for some firms, where it is kind of business owned, but I would be interested to see how that works, especially when you scale it and support it, actually. So those are some of the conversations and challenges that we've had around kind of establishing that model, the support model.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Kevin. Maybe if attendees and also panelists as well, actually, could, if they've got any comments on where should RPA sit, should it be in technology, should it be in the business, and maybe post some comments, please. We've only got 10 minutes, the time's flown, which is a good sign, but we should address some of the questions that the attendees have put in, some of the others. So I'm going to go with the first one, which is that I'm looking at here, which is on scaling. Scaling is a big issue for firms, especially in other industries where they're probably more mature in terms of the RPA journey. In fact, roughly only 20% of firms feel confident in scaling intelligent automation, meaning multiple automation across multiple departments, despite the fact that they're happy with the results. So there's obviously an issue here. And the comment here is to all the panelists, most of the UK private wealth firms have already started adoption with POC projects, but would you agree that the real benefit starts with enterprise-wide mass deployment? So I guess I'll add another question here. So is the real benefit in scaling up enterprise-wide, and what is the issue with scaling? Why is there such an issue? Andy, do you want to go?
Yeah, very happy to take that question. I think very happy to take that question. I'm not sure I agree with starting on RPA at an enterprise-wide level. I think it's important that you start with a small set of processes and as Kevin said, sort of do a proof of concept, right? Make sure you're comfortable at work, get your operating model in place, make those decisions on does it sit in technology, the business, get the right support in place. Also, as I said earlier, I'm slightly repeating myself, make sure you understand how it fits into your enterprise-wide data and digital strategy. So I wouldn't agree with starting it enterprise-wide.
Okay, thanks. But would you agree that probably the benefits are when it's scaled up? And then just to follow on with that, what do you think is inhibiting scale at the moment? Is it just the maturity of our industry?
So I think it depends on your business operating model as well. So if you operate a fully in-sourced model where you've maybe got your custody and back office in-sourced, you might have a greater amount of processes that might well benefit depending on your system, as Kevin said, from RPA and automation. If you have a fully outsourced model, then actually you do have to rely on your outsourced partner and to actually probably think about how RPA could be used in their business to benefit you. So I think the scale point comes to your business operating model. Thank you.
Andre, what have been the biggest inhibitors of firms wanting to scale when you've been working with them?
I mean, the biggest installation that I've campaigned was around 20,000 robots at the end. And what is important here, I mean, you can automate quite fast with robots and with intelligent automation, but you have to take care that if you scale, that the governance is not eating away all your benefit. So the more you scale, the more processes and the more restrictions you have, the more governance you need, and therefore you have to take care exactly if the question that we had before, where is it? Is it in IT? Is it in business? And with the whole operating model, it has to stay agile while being scalable and while using all the scale effects that you can use and not doing things twice in different areas. This is not so easy to achieve. I mean, of course, if you have 20,000 robots that do the same, that's easy. But if you have 20,000 robots doing 10,000 processes, then you have to have a certain governance, an inventory of robots, an inventory of automated applications and governance process for that. To take care that this is not eating away your benefit and your speed, that's one of the biggest challenges when you scale up.
Brilliant, good point, thank you. So we've been talking about scale, the fact that usually if you scale more, you're probably going to need more governance, so you have to probably balance out the benefits there as well. We've got a great follow-up question actually, which is, I'm sure you can all read it. I'll try and take one more after this, but RPA has a potential to reduce operational risk caused by human error, which is why, for example, Kevin used it, but it may also increase operational risk because errors may go undetected because of the inherent nature of automation. Has this ever come up as an issue, and how would you make sure that it doesn't become an issue? Kevin, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. Probably the way that I would, or the way that I look at, the automation processes that we're using, I don't see them as much similar to, say, a data transfer via an API really across two systems. You don't trust that, and you have control processes built around them, things like reconciliation. So just as you would do that, and that's kind of good practice within technology. I think you need those around automation, RPA as well, really. I think it's a good point that you can't just assume it will work. And our experience, especially the more complex processes, that there are failures, there can be failures. There's also, if there are multiple touch points, all sorts of things can happen that may impact a process running effectively. So just with any other programmatic solution, you need error checking and control processes built around them.
Thanks, Kevin. Andy, you mentioned quite a few times, really important point, that it should be part of the strategy and part of the operating model. Can you see any issues where automation may actually cause more risks?
Yeah, so I think it also that question ties a little bit to what Joe's asked as well in one of the questions around, what do you see as the key risks? And I think what's really interesting in this place is actually the balance between a good client, customer, advisor experience and operational risk, or cyber risk. And I think whenever you're digitizing or automating, that balance has really got to be considered, and it's not an easy balance. And I'm sure Kevin and other members, right, of the audience will have been in many conversations around this balance between getting a great client experience and keeping that client safe. So I think that is something I spend a lot of time on and have done in the past, and I'm sure others do. So I think it's that balance between operational risk, cyber risk, and good customer experience.
Thanks for that, Andy. Guys, we're out of time. We have a minute. I'm going to quickly wrap up, and my wrap up is going to be a massive thank you for being so open and honest in your answers. So Andre, Andy, and Kevin in particular, thank you very much. Thank you to the attendees for posting comments and questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all of them. We'll try and answer them afterwards. Howard, I can see your question on there now about regression testing, and we'll try and get round to that. We'll also try and release a summary transcript of some of the topics that we went through and some of the answers. That was great. Thank you very much, and I hope to speak to you all soon, and we'll end on 5 on the dot. Thanks. Bye.